You ever notice that in most apocalypse movies or shows, a grocery store is always just fine? Maybe a stray can rolling around, but that's kind of it. In real life, a supermarket isn't just gonna wait for you. It rots, it reeks, it turns into something you'd never want to step into. Not just because it's gross, but because it's actually dangerous. And what's crazy is that all of that has already happened. Not only once or twice, but over a dozen times. Recently online, there's been a certain fascination revolving around supermarkets that have been abandoned and became dangerous biohazardous zones. What causes that fascination is really complex and kind of hard to explain. What fascinates me the most, and I'm certain some of you as well, is both the story that leads up to the horrific aftermath we've seen time and time again. We'll be focusing on three main types of these locations. First, the typical ones you'll see floating around. Abandoned places that become rotten, infested, and ultimately the reason you see so many people in hazmat suits entering these spots. Think Mexia or Seafood City. The second focus will be on chains that actually cause fatalities from the food. Usually this isn't from being abandoned, but I thought it'd match the theme of the video nonetheless. The third part will be about abandoned places that didn't become biohazards but are still just lost to time. Tons of content creators like to enter these areas and explore the space due to it being mostly safe, so we'll wrap up the video with those. Originally, each section was supposed to take the same amount of time, but the more interesting parts are about like a bit over half of the video and the other two are kind of the rest. So it's still mostly going to be about abandoned food spots that become biohazardous, so don't worry about it being anything else. Without further delay though, let's finally get to talking about some of the most well-known places in relation to all of this. It'd be criminal to start this video without the most obvious and prominent chain to begin the discussion around the strange phenomenon. Mexia Supermarket, found in Fort Worth, Texas. The store had suddenly shut down after going bankrupt and was left untouched between July and August of 1999, peak summer especially in Fort Worth, which stayed over 100 degrees Fahrenheit most days. The owners did nothing after receiving news of their bankruptcy. They just put a close sign on the door and vanished. Some speculate they fled the state or even the country, but no one truly knows anything about them since they were just never found. The most common theory is that they left soon after the notice and fled to avoid the cost of removing everything inside. The price of emptying an entire supermarket can range between $1,000 to $3,000, and as is obvious, these people didn't have any money to throw around, especially for something that seemed as minimal as just food. Shortly after, the store lost all power, and everything inside not only lost refrigeration, but was fully exposed to the Texas summer heat. Within a few days, everything spoiled. Within a few weeks, it began to reek, and by the end of the month, it was completely unrecognizable. It wasn't until November of 1999 that people saw workers in full hazmat suits surrounding the store, one that had become impossible to even stand near. For context on how fast foodborne illness spreads, this is a ranch bottle. I opened it one night and just forgot to put it back in the fridge. Ranch, after opening the seal, grows bacteria and gross stuff within 2 hours. I left it out for 24. Dumb, stupid brain me didn't think about it, and I ate 2 spoonfuls of it for my fucking McDonald's fries. And since I ate that at 11 p.m. and then went and laid down, I had the worst night of my life. I didn't have to go to the ER or anything, but like, my toilet is now witness to horrors that no one should ever have to endure. That's from 1 day of expiration. And sure, shelf-stable units won't expire in the same time span due to the seal. However, it's everything that makes ranch that makes it expire fast. Buttermilk, egg, mayonnaise, just textbook perishables that go bad in just a few days without refrigeration. Items in the store that required 24/7 refrigeration lost it for not 2 hours, not 24 hours, but 3 months minimum. Since it's not just milk and eggs, but also general meat and produce, all of this created hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and methane. The decomposition also created airborne mold spores, maggots, rodent droppings, and liquid rot. Not to mention that all the toxic air inside had completely depleted oxygen, so even if you somehow don't get sick or die from breathing everything in, you literally wouldn't be able to breathe at all. So naturally, everyone who did enter had to be covered head to toe just to be in the vicinity of it. Everything from liquefied meat to moldy packaging had to be removed by hand. Hazmat teams scraped it off the floors, sealed it in drums, and sent it to landfill under biohazard disposal rules. Hiring a cleanup crew to send all this material to a general landfill would have cost $3,000 max. But due to the rot and decay, the entire situation ended up costing the city at least $10,000. Some people speculate that it could have been up to $40,000, but we don't have a concrete number. Many people are deeply curious or fascinated by the story on its own, but what intrigues others is that it's really hard to find any footage or photos of any of it. See, Mexia is an incident from 1999, before smartphones or wide internet access are just widely available. That meant no widespread media coverage or general knowledge of the event existed outside of the city. Most only heard about it from local newspapers or smelled it nearby. Footage of the incident was oddly hard to find. Even with those limitations, you'd think something would surface, but for a long time, there was nothing. Eventually though, footage came to light after the airing of The Last Supper, an episode from Life After People. Life After People is a documentary series exploring one simple question. If everyone disappeared, what would happen? The episode documents what would happen to food in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, and so on. When it gets to the 3-month mark, it stops relying on hypotheticals and uses Mexia as a real-world example. It shows the visual footage of what happened there, and fascinatingly, this random episode remains one of the only media sources for the incident. It's pretty common to see people say that Jimmy McClurg from the City of Fort Worth Environmental Management Department was the one who gave the History Channel so much footage. Here's a photo of him outside the store after it was boarded up, by the way. We're still not sure how the film crew heard about the story or why they were allowed in, but it's interesting to know that they were. Despite all of this, none of the VHS tapes gathered from filming are publicly available. Only a few clips were used for Life After People, and those, along with a handful of photos, are all we have. Unlike some locations, this one isn't still boarded up and abandoned. After being cleared and fixed in 1999, the building went on to operate as Terry's El Mariachi Supermarket from 2007 to 2013. Then it became Family Dollar, and in 2022, a Dollar General. In fact, here it is on Google Maps if you're curious. The only real similarities are the glass doors and the yellow parking lines, but clearly 26 years have taken a toll on this building's appearance. Mexia is one of, if not the most recognized name in these stories of abandoned and biohazardous locations. But another store comes close to its infamy. Seafood City Supermarket, located in University City, Missouri, was open until just 2 years ago. Not very long ago, it was a successful supermarket. That changed in the March of 2023, when it was ordered closed by local health authorities after serious code violations. These included improper storage, since food items were kept at an unsafe temperature. Cold items like seafood and meat weren't held below the required 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There was also a dead rodent found. Inspectors discovered a dead mouse under equipment, which is obviously a major sanitization issue. And with that, there was just general sanitation failures. Reports noted unclean surfaces, improperly stored food, and poor pest control all throughout the store. With these poor habits in place, it wasn't surprising what happened after closure. Just like before, the owner accepted the closure, but did nothing to remove the food. Unlike the Mexia owners though, this one faced heavy legal trouble. Mexia was left untouched in the Texas summer for 3 months, a long time for food to rot and contaminate the area. Seafood City mostly carried seafood, which didn't spread as many diseases or airborne risk, but the consequences were far more devastating for the neighborhood. Despite closing in spring 2023, this took 6 months to act because the city kept contacting the owner, who never responded. Legal barriers prevented the city from entering and addressing the issue. Eventually, they had to go through code enforcement, gather health violation records, and file lawsuits to gain access. Even after all of this though, the store still stands, abandoned and untouched. After cleanup crews finished their job, residents reported that the smell had calmed down, and as of now, it seems to be mostly gone. People still visit the site, and many film or take photos, but entering or recording the inside is strictly prohibited. Most recent footage only shows the exterior, blinds drawn, windows covered. At street level, it just looks like any empty retail space. No signs hint at decay or a biohazard crew having been there, or the cleanup nightmare that it once was. Google Maps' last capture of the location was from 2022, back when it was still open. It looks bright and frankly normal compared to what it became, despite its health violations already being hidden inside at that point. It's no surprise a store with such neglect would go on to risk the safety of an entire neighborhood, really. And it's honestly just upsetting that it took 6 whole months for anything to be done. Some rumors claim that neighboring businesses had to shut down or relocate because of the contamination, but from what I've seen, none of those have been confirmed. Something I've seen said a lot in forums discussing cases like this goes along the lines of, why not just donate all the food to a food bank instead of letting it rot and become a health hazard? And entirely, I agree. It's a fair question, but after digging, it's just way more complicated than that. Like I mentioned earlier, food spoils so much faster than most people realize. To safely donate that amount of food, it would have needed to happen immediately, and in both of these cases, the closures were abrupt. That short window to haul out thousands of pounds of perishable food, even if it was cheap or free, just wasn't realistic. Sure, maybe if the cities had given warning, something could have been arranged. But so yeah, in theory, it's a really nice thought, but realistically, it just was never going to happen. Both of these cases happened in the US, which I know probably makes someone out there go, ha, classic Americans, how silly. I don't know what that accent was. And while yeah, a lot of these happen in good old America, it's definitely not just an American issue. In fall 2021, Northern Ontario would have its own rotting supermarket situation. This one happened during the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic. A place called the Bavarian Meat Shop suddenly shut its doors. It's suspected that the pandemic made it impossible to stay profitable. Nobody was really leaving their homes, and even by the time people were venturing out again, the financial damage was already done. So the place was just abandoned. Mexia sat for 3 months. Seafood City sat for 6. Canada decided to be extra special because Bavarian Meat Shop was left to rot for about 8 to 10 months, from fall 2021 until midsummer 2022. The city of North Bay took the lead after locals started complaining non-stop about the smell and pest problem. Some people said you could smell the rot from 5 meters away. Classic by now, hazmat suits were involved once again. But since the owners haven't responded to any attempts at contact, the city can't legally touch what's inside. So instead, in June 2022, they issued a compliance order under the Clean Yards bylaw, demanding removal of all the rotting meat in the bins outside of the building. Basically, they only cleared the garbage outside and boarded up the store as much as they legally could while trying to sort out ownership and liability stuff. The latest update I could find was from late 2022, and according to that, all the meat that was left inside is still there. That makes it 4 years of sealed, unrefrigerated meat sitting hotter than room temperature and slowly rotting away. Okay, so update, I lied. So it's really complicated. I started looking into it again because I was like, that doesn't sound right. You know, 4 years being left alone. Maybe I missed something, yeah? So I looked deeper into it, and it's just impossible to find any concrete evidence of what this store is like today. So in fall of 2021, it's closed with all the meat inside, we know that. And in mid-2022, we know that hazmat crews came in and removed the 8 tons of exterior bins. But from 2022 to 2025, all we know is that there's a possibility that interior cleanup happened, and there's some bits of footage, at least I'm reading that there is, but I can't find any. And up to right now, there's no official confirmation yet that every piece is gone from the inside. And I found this TikTok talking about it. It's this guy saying that new people bought it and then gave the original owner that abandoned it $1 million to clean it up. But that's not confirmed either, and the source that he puts behind him saying that doesn't say that either. So honestly, I don't know what to tell you. The most that I can find is that the source that he cited has the following lines from the North Bay deputy mayor, who basically said this: "We could not find any way inside because the city has no jurisdiction inside the building. We tried going inside under property standards or by law, but we had no jurisdiction going inside a building where there was no building code violation." So basically, the most that I'm saying is that because this shop was abandoned by the owner who had no code violations and didn't actually do anything wrong, there is no reason that the city has to enter it to clean it out, because there's technically no violation because the owner is not selling it to anyone, which is really stupid, but it's technicality law stuff, basically. I cannot find any complete confirmation that it's been cleaned out. I cannot find any complete confirmation that there is still meat inside. It's just really hard to understand what the situation is. I would just say keep your eyes on it and see if anything new comes out of it, because I cannot find anything like after 2023. So sorry about that. There's no footage or photos of the inside of this location since, well, a few things. Ontario has the ag-gag law, which limits photographing or recording inside meat processing facilities, and that includes abandoned ones. There's also the general legal barrier of entering at all, since it's been declared a serious health hazard. Trespassing would result in heavy fines on its own, and anyone stupid enough to break either of those laws would end up in a room of 17,000 pounds of 4-year-old meat. I asked one of my smart science friends, like, what happens to me after 4 years, and I just copied and pasted what he said. After 4 years, most of the meat would have gone through full putrefaction, all tissue liquefied or dried out in sludge made of fats, proteins, and sulfur-rich fluids. Bones might remain, but everything else would be black rot, dried meat crust, or sludge. Bacteria like Clostridium, Salmonella, and E. coli could still be active in anaerobic pockets. That's a lot of big words that I mostly don't know, but that's what he said, and it sounds pretty bad. TLDR though, the space would most likely be filled with ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, putrescine, and cadaverine. Possibly methane or low oxygen levels as well. All of these can cause nausea, dizziness, vomiting, chemical burns, or respiratory failure. Even with a P100 mask and supplied air respirator, you'd likely faint, suffer severe lung damage, or straight up asphyxiate. If top tier gear can't protect you in there, no random YouTuber with a bandana over his mouth is surviving long enough to just get a few quick pictures. As time passes, it only gets worse, and stepping in becomes more dangerous, legally and physically. And since the owners still haven't returned, nothing can happen until the city gets a court order, which, for whatever reason, still hasn't happened. The best we have is footage from the outside. The old closure sign, probably written in 10 seconds, is surrounded by flies. Google Maps hasn't updated since June 2021 here, so we just have a glimpse from a few months before all of this happened. So, yeah, unlike the first two stores, this one is still just there. Okay, I didn't lie about that. I would say I just didn't know. But currently, that property is in fact still there, but it's currently also on sale for $1.5 million, which I'm not gonna pay that. I would go there if it was local, but it's Canada. If anyone in Canada can get there and send me a pic of it, that would really help. But I can't really confirm what it's like right now. All of that's based on what I thought in the past, and this is based on what I know now, which is somehow even less. So that's all I can say about it. While all these locations so far have been supermarkets, I think it's worth mentioning a chain restaurant that met a similar fate. In the spring of 2011, a Popeyes in East New York, Brooklyn abruptly shut down mid-service after the franchisee filed for bankruptcy. The staff and management just left. Food, fryer oil, raw chicken, all of it was left out and unstored. Normally, all of that would be tossed during closing on any normal day for any franchise. But this time, it was just abandoned and left there. Almost immediately, it was overrun by thousands of flies. Trash bins overflowed, raw meat rotted in place, and locals described the sickening stench spilling into the street. According to most sources, the site was left for about 4 to 6 weeks, and even though that's nowhere near as long as the supermarket cases, it was enough for this Popeyes to become a health hazard. After dozens of complaints from neighbors, the NYC Health Department was forced to intervene. A hazmat level cleanup was eventually ordered because it posed a health risk to nearby homes and businesses. The site remained decayed and shuttered for several months before eventually being cleaned and repurposed. No charges were filed against the franchisee, who had apparently disappeared after going bankrupt. Personally, I can usually handle supermarket footage fine, except the black meat sludge. I fucking hate that. But the images of flies completely infesting this place just make me so uncomfortable. Maybe it's because I really hate bugs, which, yes, I know that's ironic. Oh, your name is B, you hate bugs. Yeah, shut up. Okay. I just really can't stand the sight of so many flies. To close out this section of abandoned locations, I wanted to include a sort of honorable mention. It doesn't quite fit the rest of the categories, but I couldn't bring myself to leave it out after I saw it. While researching this video, I came across the tragic story of one man's disappearance. On November 28 of 2009, 25-year-old Larry Eli Murillo Moncada fled his home during a blizzard, in the midst of a mental health episode. His family and police searched for years, but for a long while, he was just never seen. He was an employee at the No Frills supermarket in Council Bluffs, Iowa, a store that shut down in 2016. Unlike the others we've covered, it was emptied out. However, the shelving and refrigeration units were still in place. Then, 3 years later on January 24th of 2019, contractors finally began dismantling the equipment. While removing one of the refrigeration units, they discovered a decaying body wedged behind it. It was impossible to identify visually. It wasn't until July, through DNA testing, that it was confirmed to be Murillo's. Investigators concluded it was an accidental death. He likely climbed onto the coolers, fell into an 18-inch gap behind a 12-foot fridge, and got trapped. The constant noise from the fridge probably masked his calls for help, and he died in that corner. It was 10 years before he was found. Since he wasn't scheduled to work the day he ran from home, no one thought to check that store. And even if they did, nobody would have thought to look behind a stupid loud fridge in a tight wedge. Some customers reported strange odors around that area at the time, but most assumed it was spoiled meat or nearby product going bad. If they ever complained to staff, then nothing was done. If anyone had taken it seriously, he could have been found sooner. Not in time to save him, but at least his family could have had peace about what happened. Reportedly, it was common practice for employees to climb shelving and fridge units for a bunch of reasons. Extra storage space, hiding spots during breaks, just a bunch of random reasons, really. It was just bad habits that stuck despite regulations. During his mental episode, he probably climbed out of instinct and then slipped down the gap. But bad habits aside, it's wild that nobody cleaned or even checked that space from 2009 to 2016. If anyone had, he would have been found much earlier. Like I mentioned, this story doesn't follow the usual pattern of rotting food or public biohazards. It's just a tragic case that could have been avoided if the store had better habits. And unfortunately, out of all the stories mentioned here, this one feels like it could happen again the easiest. Murillo wasn't the only person to die from something related to this strange phenomenon. Sometimes a place doesn't even need to be abandoned to become a biohazard. Sometimes it just takes the wrong people in the wrong place. Psst, hey, yeah, you, hey, come here, I've got something to show you. Just take a step closer, come right over here. That's right, it's late June, which means I'm scrambling to make a video and prepare my art for art fight at the same time. Yay! So yeah, I'm doing art fight again, so if you want to attack someone on Team Crystal with very cool characters, you should consider me. I've got rats, birds, six-limbed women, and more, I guess. I usually advertise my commissions by this point, which, by the way, yes, they are still open, but due to my summer classes and work, and especially now art fight, there's a semi-long waitlist. So if you're still interested, just DM me. My DMs are always open for anyone. Just don't expect anything to be delivered for a few weeks. But okay, enough about me. That was probably a horrid time to insert that. But back to what I wanted to talk about. Food against people. In 1984, in Dallas, Oregon, the Rajneeshis attempted to take political control of the local county government. Their plan was to sicken enough voters so that their own cult members could win elections unopposed. The Rajneeshis were members of the Rajneesh movement, which is now widely regarded as a cult. These were followers of Indian guru Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who is also known as Osho. His second-in-command, Ma Anand Sheela, orchestrated the entire plot. I probably fucked up all those names, I know, I'm sorry. To pull it off, cult members grew salmonella bacteria in a private lab on their commune. They contaminated salad bars at 10 restaurants, including McDonald's and Taco Time, and also poisoned doorknobs, produce, and other public surfaces. As a result, 751 people fell ill with salmonella poisoning. 45 were hospitalized, but somehow, no one died. They had also planned to target the town's water supply, but that phase was never executed, which, thank God. Following the mass illness, the FBI and CDC launched a full investigation. In 1985, Sheela and another leader fled, but were captured in Germany. Both were convicted and sentenced to prison for attempted murder and bioterrorism. Bhagwan Rajneesh denied any involvement but was deported, not for the attack, but for immigration fraud, of all things. This is widely known as the first major bioterror attack on US soil, an attempt to manipulate a political election through food contamination. It's honestly a miracle that despite 750 people falling ill, no one died. But the scariest part is how easily the food system was exploited by untrained individuals. Food is one of the few things that connects everyone, and when it falls into the wrong hands, even without evil intentions, it can become a far more dangerous weapon than most people realize. In the fall of 2003, a Chi-Chi's location inside a mall in Monaca, Pennsylvania became the source of the largest hepatitis A outbreak in US history, all because of one shipment of green onions. Hepatitis A is a highly contagious virus that affects the liver. It spreads when someone ingests microscopic amounts of fecal matter, usually through contaminated food or water. Basically, if someone doesn't wash their hands properly and touches your food, or if food is washed with dirty water, there's a risk of it. It can cause liver inflammation, nausea, fatigue, and jaundice. Symptoms usually show up 2 to 6 weeks after exposure. Most people recover, but it can be fatal for the elderly or immunocompromised. Chi-Chi's was a popular Mexican chain, competing with places like Taco Bell and Chili's. One of their main strategies was importing ingredients directly from Mexico, including, in this case, a contaminated shipment of green onions. Hepatitis A can be killed by cooking at high heat, but Chi-Chi's use the onions raw in mild salsa and queso dip. Because symptoms take weeks to appear, it's believed most of the contaminated onions had already been served by the time anyone realized what was happening. An estimated 575 to 650 people fell ill, 485 to 600 were hospitalized, and 4 deaths were confirmed across Pennsylvania and surrounding states. CDC case control studies linked the outbreak to salsa made with raw green onions. The onions were traced back to farms in Mexico, stored in ice buckets and served over multiple days. What's especially wild is that Chi-Chi's had already filed for bankruptcy just before the outbreak. They were already barely holding on financially, and after this, there was no hope for recovery. They were ordered to pay millions in legal settlements, including $6.25 million to one man who required a liver transplant. Whatever money they had left despite bankruptcy was completely gone by 2004 from all the lawsuits, and it wouldn't be long until all locations in the US and Canada were closed for good. Hundreds of people sick, 4 deaths, and all of that because of one shipment of green onions. I saw some people online asking why would Chi-Chi's have to pay if they didn't grow or contaminate the scallions? And the thing is that, at least in the US, restaurants are legally responsible for the safety of what they serve, even if the contamination comes from a supplier. In this case, there was limited traceability or safety auditing of where those onions came from. Chains are expected to know and vet their suppliers specifically to avoid situations like this. This is called strict liability, I learned an hour ago. It basically means if someone gets sick from your food, your responsibility. End of story. Even beyond that, the lack of proper protocol to wash these ingredients clearly made it worse. impossible to say whether better washing would have completely prevented the outbreak. I doubt anyone in the back was vigorously scrubbing every scallion, so at the very least, a proper rinse could have helped minimize the damage. Chi-Chi's faded into obscurity after the outbreak. Its only real legacy now is being the hepatitis A outbreak spot. Yet recently, the restaurant is actually trying to come back. It's set to reopen this year under the son of the original co-founder, with 2 new full-service locations planned in Minnesota. It was originally planned for early 2025, but that clearly hasn't happened, so I'm assuming it got pushed back. I don't even know if it's gonna happen at all though. And even if it does, I don't think it'll be nearly as successful or well-known as it used to be. It's hard to wash a blemish like this off of your name, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, Chi-Chi's wasn't the only chain restaurant to cause a massive outbreak. And worse, it wouldn't just be one location this time. In January of 1993, an E. coli outbreak hit Washington, California, Nevada, and Idaho, all tied to one chain, Jack in the Box. A shipment of contaminated beef arrived at several locations, all carrying E. coli, and I'm gonna butcher this, 015H7. I don't know if I said it right. At the time, Jack in the Box's internal cooking standard was 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and that doesn't kill E. coli. The USDA had actually warned them already to raise it to 165, but corporate chose not to comply immediately because of taste and texture concerns. So when the contaminated patties were cooked below safe temperatures at multiple restaurants, the bacteria survived. This specific strain of E. coli is known to cause severe intestinal infections in humans. It's the most common strain responsible for illness, and back then, suppliers weren't even required to test for it. There were 3 layers to this outbreak: contaminated beef from the supplier, bad policy decisions from corporate, and unsafe cooking practices in the kitchens themselves. And again, this wasn't one store, but 4 different states. Over 700 people were sick, and most of them were children. And sadly, 4 died. All 4 of them were kids. While most of them were able to recover, dozens suffered long-term health effects like kidney failure. Like Chi-Chi's, lawsuits came in fast. One severely injured child received a $15.6 million settlement. If Jack in the Box had been in slightly worse financial condition, this could have ended the entire brand. But they survived, barely, after intense public apologies, major overhauls, and paying out millions to affected families. This incident directly led to major reforms in US safety laws. That includes the USDA declaring E. coli 0157H7 a banned contaminant in ground beef. It also introduced the hazard analysis of critical control points as a system for meat processing. You may recognize this as HACCP. As well, new federal regulations on cooking temperatures and microbial testing became required. It's awful that tragedy had to happen for those changes to exist, but this outbreak is one of the key events that shaped modern food safety in the US. It took until 1993 for the USDA to be like, hey guys, let's not let E. coli get in the meat, okay? It's so dumb, and what's worse, it keeps happening. In 2006, Taco Bell joined in with their own contaminated green onions, this time with E. coli. So, 2-for-1 special, I guess. Chipotle took the crown from 2015 to 2018. They didn't have one E. coli outbreak, no. They went for the combo because they had an E. coli outbreak with 60 people sickened, several hospitalized, and then went on to have a salmonella outbreak. However, they had norovirus outbreaks from 2015, 2017, and 2018. Over 900 people sickened total. Those norovirus outbreaks traced back to employees working while visibly sick. In one 2015 case, an employee literally threw up near the food and just kept working. I've heard Chipotle has a history of forcing workers, usually minors, to clock in for long hours. So, are we really surprised? It's Chipotle. But how we refuse to learn from history and keep risking the safety of everyday people is so weird. It's not like you walk into a Subway and just think, man, I sure hope there's no botulism in my sandwich this time. Anything happening more than once is already too many times. And for one chain to have 4 outbreaks? That's not normal. Maybe I'm a bit off topic now, my bad. But yeah, I figured some quick examples of how food spoils and how dangerous it really can be are relevant. Foodborne illnesses are no joke. Often, abandoned stops become dangerous from being left in horrible conditions and rotting. And even with open businesses, it's the same neglect that causes food to not only go bad, but even worse, get consumed. Most of the time, these abandoned or ruined locations get rebuilt as something new. If they stay in a rotting state, they're usually completely closed off and extremely dangerous to enter. So, what about locations that were abandoned, but still stuck in time? One of the best examples comes from 2022, where a new story surfaced out of Mexico. Details about the store are really hard to find for some reason. It's mostly just social media posts retelling the story vaguely. In 2022, the store went bankrupt and, as usual, was abandoned. Soon after, everything that could rot went to waste instantly. It wasn't until 2024 that hazmat teams entered, emptied out the perishables, and dipped. Nothing else. So even to this day, that store is still just where it used to be. Anything that wasn't expired or couldn't expire was left behind, including canned goods and these really freaky piñatas. Also, I thought that this photo of who I'm assuming is decaying Midwest standing over them menacingly was really funny. There are a lot of places like this, abandoned and cleared but still existing. Most of them are more modern, post-COVID-19 closures. Even though they're public and can still be photographed, they tend to be way less popular than the stories of Mexia or Seafood City. There was also Sooner Market, which was abandoned in the 2000s. At the very least, it's been untouched for 15 years. But it didn't rot or decay like others. These aisles are dusty but intact. No signs of rotting food, just faded packaging and time-worn shelves. It's suspected that Sooner Market had a more organized shutdown. The fridges and freezers are empty or long dead, no dairy, no meat, nothing to attract pests or stink up the place. Instead, you can only find canned vegetables, box mixes, cereal, packaged snacks, and cleaning supplies. These don't rot in the same way, they just become inedible. As of now, it's still standing and slowly deteriorating, but not to the point of being a health hazard. It's not spoiled or rotten as much as it's just old. Google Maps shows a photo of it, last updated in March of this year. Small, still, more like a time capsule of the early 2000s than a decayed ruin. A lot of content creators find places like this just out in the wild, like Swag Productions, who is constantly trespassing to document abandoned spots. I thought it was funny that Swag had to do 150 hours of community service for trespassing, finish them, and immediately went right back to it. If you've got a niche, I guess you stick to it. So, still, you can find tons of content creators photographing these types of supermarkets, especially those that didn't go full biohazard. A lot of them end up just going there to take pictures because, well, I mean, yeah, look at these places, like, that's a really cool photo. I've mentioned Decaying Midwest and Swag Productions, but you can also find great content from Urbex Ashton, Bros of Decay, and Explomo. If I had to recommend one, it'd be Bros of Decay, because their editing and aesthetic are genuinely so cool. A lot of channels tend to go for loud, overly dramatic styles like, the Mr. Beast kind, but Bros leans more into documentary educational tone, which, especially for this video, I appreciated a lot. Regardless, check any and all of them out. They're awesome creators who are, let's be honest, dubiously breaking the law for content, so may as well give them the money to pay those trespassing fines. I still don't know what it is about these stops and biohazardous locations in general that sparks so much fascination online. Regardless, it's real and it got me hooked too. I deadass didn't even know what Mexia was until like a week ago, thanks to this random TikTok of someone who drew a bunch of these places as humans, cause I'm an artist before anything else. And yeah, we can argue about the ethics of drawing a biohazardous location as a person, sure, but I think it's cool, I'm sorry. And hey, now I know something I didn't before, and hopefully you do too. I've not much else to say, so bye. It's currently 6 a.m. I had a really funny, at the time funny idea to keep the ranch bottle that has now been sitting out for 5 days. And it was funny at the time. The idea was, oh, when I finish editing, this is gonna be like done fucking cementing, I guess. And I realized when I started filming for this, it's leaking now because it's forming so many gases that it's like going up. It was like right here when it went bad, but I thought it'd be a fucking amazing idea to end the video by just taking a whiff of it.
Take off your idols, take off the runway, take off the Cairo, take off the sandal, pay 5 days stay, take a put a meal and a follow. Take off the fuck flag, take off perception, take off the cop with the iPad, take off the unload, take off the unsure, take off decisions I had.